Hello, my name is Taylor Hernandez, and today I am going to be talking about the male reproductive system as well as the endocrine system and kind of how they work together. So I am just going to go through the process of how sperm is created and how it travels throughout the male reproductive system, and how and what hormones are involved in helping this along. Because really, without the hormones that are being secreted throughout this process, there wouldn't be any sperm that was created, really. So to start off, in the male testes, this is where sperm is created. This is where it's produced. About 15,000 sperm are produced a second. Sperm is not as complicated as an egg. There is, of course, the head of the sperm and the tail, and that is pretty much it. The tail is used for motility. There's mitochondria on this just to give it some energy to make it all the way to the egg. And then, of course, you have the head of the sperm, which contains all of the DNA that will be released into the egg. So, within the testes, there are many tubules, and it consists of seminiferous tubules, okay? And in these tubules, this is where male gametes are made, as I said, as well as the hormone known as testosterone, because the testes are, of course, a part of the male reproductive system, but that is also an organ that is part of the endocrine system. The testes are within the male scrotum, placed outside of the body because it needs to reach a certain cooler temp of 37 degrees Celsius. It needs to stay at a cooler temperature for the sperm to be able to survive, to be able to create, or to be able to be made, that type of thing. As I said before, seminiferous tubules are actually where sperm is created. However, it just doesn't happen out of nowhere. This is where the endocrine system comes involved. The hypothalamus within the male's brain ends up secreting, or not really secreting, it ends up having the pituitary glands start secreting FSH hormone, I can't talk, and the luteinizing hormone. And when these hormones are released, it goes into the bloodstream and travels down to the testes, where the testes are triggered to release testosterone and ABP, which ABP binds to the testosterone to kind of help it gain more mass, make it bigger, that kind of thing. And these hormones are, when the FSH hormone and the luteinizing hormone are released, and then it signals the ABP hormone as well as testosterone to begin being created. This is what really signals the development of sperm. This is what, when the male gametes start being created, when they start dividing through meiosis and so forth. Once the gametes have been produced, of course, they can't just be released as is. They need a way of motility, which, as I mentioned earlier, is the tail of the sperm. And this is done through spermiogenesis. This is when the gamete that has been produced, this is when it develops a tail for that motility. That is what spermiogenesis is. And then once it has developed the tail, and then it has the head, it then moves from the seminiferous tubules inside of the testes into the epididymis, which there is the descending and ascending part. And within the epididymis, this is where the sperm spends a lot of time. This is where the sperm gets the mitochondria that it needs to be able to make its journey all the way from, obviously, the testes to the egg within the female reproductive system in the fallopian tubes. The epididymis also gives them energy. It gives, like I said, the mitochondria. And then once it has been given that, the sperm obviously has all of its parts that it needs. It has its DNA, it has its tail, and it has its mitochondria. It then travels from the epididymis through the vas deferens, and then it will then travel through the ejaculatory duct, through the prostate gland, and then obviously through the urethra, and then through the penis, and exit through there. So, sperm, the semen that is produced that comes from ejaculation, contains obviously semen. It contains testicular fluid as well as gland secretions. And the gland secretions they play a very vital role in the transportation of the sperm. Obviously, when ejaculation occurs, there are millions of sperm cells within that ejaculation. However, the journey that the sperm must make, it needs to be able to survive, which is where these gland secretions come in, which there are three main ones. There is the seminal glands, there are the prostate glands, and then there is the bulbourethral glands. So the seminal glands secrete like this very almost a little bit yellow kind of fluid into the semen, and this is what helps nourish the sperm, keep it more safe, more likely to survive, like, I guess in terms you could say better health for the sperm. And then the prostate gland secretes a certain substance to help the sperm have easier mobility when it's traveling through the penis as well as through the female reproductive system, because obviously it has a ways to make for its very small size. And then lastly, the bulbourethral gland. This secretes a substance that goes before the semen, really, and it's secreted to go through the urethra in order to clean out any leftover urine within that area, because urine would of course end up killing the sperm. This is of course how sperm travels from the testes all the way to the female reproductive system, and without the endocrine system, this would really not be possible. Obviously, the pituitary gland produces the FSH hormone as well as the luteinizing hormone, and if it weren't for those two glands, then testosterone as well as the ABP hormone would not be able to be triggered to start producing to create the sperm. So really, these two systems work hand in hand, and without one or the other, there would be no production of sperm, and of course, no fertilization. Thank you.